Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Rodney Smith.
And I'm Stephen Buonocore.
And hey, they're different than Sam and Z. I invited them here. We did some live gaming, which you can watch on our channel. But I thought that this topic would be kind of interesting because both of us have to deal with it. So real quickly, you guys know what I do in the industry. What do you do in the gaming industry?
Yeah, so I create instructional videos. Publishers will hire us to create the instructional videos for their games. And then we'll also do playthroughs as well so people can watch and learn how it's played and then hopefully decide for themselves whether or not it'd be a good fit for them.
And of course, I am the president and owner of Stronghold Games, hobby game publisher, mostly in North America, but we distribute throughout the world.
Now, in the gaming industry, there's many different positions and things. There's obviously game designers and game artists. There are publishers, and then all the different people who work with publishers. There are manufacturers, who are the people who actually make the games and send them to the publishers.
Printers, we call
Printers, manufacturers, whatever. And then there's distributors, who the publishers will send. And then there's the gaming stores that sell all the games. And so there's the game media, which we're part of, although we're very different because Rodney does not actually...
Right, I don't review, I don't give opinions.
Opinionize.
Yeah.
But he's also, you're part of the industry.
Sure.
And both of us, somehow or other, have gotten money from listeners and viewers.
Yes.
Through Kickstarters and things like that, and Indiegogo and such. But we've also gotten money from publishers in various ways, whether it was being paid to do a certain project, or so it could be advertising, it could be promos, it could just be like from the distributors maybe flying us to a convention, different things like that. And some people have brought up the fact about relationships between the media and the gaming industry.
Right, can you stay unbiased? Can you stay uninfluenced by this kind of financial support, right?
Yes, and I mean that's always going to be, first of all, no matter what anyone says, there's always going to be people who will never believe it, right? You can say, I'm totally unbiased or whatever, and no one will ever believe that. And obviously, we are friends with many people in the industry because otherwise Steve would not be in my house, so far from his house.
Yes,
right. I mean, you wouldn't just... I don't think you would do this like a business trip, right? I mean, it's maybe kind of business and stuff, but I mean, it wouldn't be like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to go through here and just go through the motions.
You spend several $100s to come down for the weekend to...
this isn't Shark Tank where they bring together a bunch of people.
Beaten up by Tom.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, there's a lot of friendships in the industry, and one thing you discover as you start through is how quickly you can make friends with everybody.
Right.
This isn't like many industries where, well, I know these people, but the CEOs, I never meet them. You can, maybe with the exception of like companies like Hasbro, you can meet the CEO and
Hasbro's tangentially in this industry.
Right, but I mean...
Well, you can meet the CEOs, the owners of every hobby game company.
You can.
Yeah.
Everyone. And that's from the biggest ones, Asmodee, Fantasy Flight. They're there all the time. Chris Peterson is at all the big conventions. You can talk to him. He's a wonderful guy. And they want to engage you.
Right, they'll give you the time of day, and that doesn't happen in many other industries.
You cannot get that in almost any
I think
industry.
probably the issue here, though, is defining, well, what the issue is. What does it matter? And I think probably where it comes down for, I imagine most people who would be watching this, if you're someone who watches someone to review, is, I have $70 I want to spend. I want to spend it on a game. I want to know if this game is going to be fun and enjoyable for me to play. So I want to listen to a reviewer, or I'm going to watch it played, or whatever, to help me make that decision. And I don't want to spend this money, and suddenly I'm not going to have the fun that this person said I was going to have. So are they telling me it's fun and enjoyable because they're friends with that person, or do they genuinely believe that this game is fun? I think that's one of the things where it factors in, right? This is the thing that people concern themselves with. And I understand the concern, but the problem is biases are kind of like they're pre-existing condition. Like let's remove all the associations you have with Stronghold or anyone else.
Yes.
You have sorry, I can't make that happen actually. But we're all filled with biases to begin with. So even if you remove one of them, it doesn't solve that problem for the person watching, whether or not there's some other bias at work. It could be that you didn't sleep well the night before, or that you just got in a fight with somebody, or your car broke down or whatever. Those biases exist within whatever content we create, and even if you separate one, you still got to deal with all the rest of them. Now, it's not to say we shouldn't talk about this particular issue, but I do want to caution people against the idea that, well, if we could remove that factor, then suddenly I can get the perfect information I'm looking for, because you just can't. You can't get that perfect information. It doesn't exist, right? Because there's always going to be some kind of bias at work.
Now, part of this also comes from other industries. There was when the music industry back in the day, and people even are insistent that it still happens now, payola, where people would pay money for music to be played more often on the radio, or to say that, hey, this music's more popular than it is. There are reviewers who have been bought off and things. And I'm not going to get into this as much here specifically, but there's the whole, wow, dude, I'll take that. But like the whole getting a game itself
Sure.
will bias you toward that end. But there's a couple things that I think that can prove the point. I mean, one is just pure facts. Okay? Steve and I are good friends. It really is true. We pretend that it's not, but it really is true, right? But you can look at my track record of all the games I've reviewed of his, and they are not 100% positive.
Oh, I've listened to many comments Tom's made during this trip.
During this trip.
Tearing down the game, sure.
Okay, no, right,
Some
but
other people.
okay, but so the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, right? I remember when a couple years ago we first went to Cool Mini Convention, and they flew you and me in, and we went there and did things, and people said, "Oh, well, they're buying you off."
Right.
And we say, okay, well, where do we draw the line on that? But that's just the formation of a business relationship, and they were compensating us for our time that we were taking away from our jobs to go and do that. Now, will that predispose us to like them? I don't see how you can avoid that.
Well, so again, like, even if you're being negative about something, that's not even proof that there's not a bias at work. Negativity can be a bias. It can come from a biased place again. Like, the idea of removing bias, I think, is just kind of a false notion. But I'll be clear, like, I am biased. Like, if I get a game from a publisher approaches me and says, Rodney, would you feature this game? And it's a publisher I've worked with before, I have a good working relationship with, and I get it, and I know it's going to be more work than another game because the rulebook maybe is a little bit of a mess. I might, because of the relationship I have with them, go, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot that I wouldn't give to somebody else because of the biased relationship I have from working with that company and enjoying that relationship. So I will definitely make decisions that are bias-based. But it probably affects me a little differently because I don't do reviews, so there's not that part of the opinion piece in there. But it certainly influences me.
You're making a business decision on doing a watch it played on this versus
right. I am choosing to give something exposure over something else.
There's certainly nothing wrong with that because because you have business relationships with people and you like to work with some.
Right.
Well, you don't want to work with some. That's a normal thing in business, and that it sort of just comes from what Tom was saying. You're establishing relationships, business relationships with people, and sometimes they become personal as well, and that's just normal. I have some very strong opinions on this entire topic.
Oh, yeah?
Because it's been like, yeah, I mean, I keep hearing it. And it's so interesting that, this industry, we are in the most social industry there is. I mean, what do? We're about getting together, sitting around a table, and enjoying each other's company. I mean, how many industries create that? We as publishers are creating fun. So we're doing that, and then we're bringing it to people, reviewers, people who are going to do videos for us, the gaming public, and of course we want to show them that fun, and we're going to establish relationships with them. This is basic human nature. And it's crazy to think that we shouldn't be doing that. And Tom and I shouldn't be talking and hanging out in his house and doing that and having a meal together. He's not going to change his opinion of my games. He likes them or he doesn't like them based on the game. And you can see that by the integrity of the reviews that he puts out. And I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting next to him. He will say the way he feels about games. And it's crazy to think that people, there's going to be general biases that, Rodney, you brought up.
Right.
That always come in. Again, that's human nature as well. But people are going to be honest. If you trust the people that are doing the reviews, then you trust them. And you trust them to do the review correctly.
I think there's two really good safeguards if you are concerned about it. One, don't use one person as your only source of information.
Sure.
That's one thing. And then two, also look at the person's motivation. So like, for example, in my case, I do get some money from publishers for the instructional videos. But the vast majority of my funding, like by a long shot, are the fundraisers I run every year. So I really when I look at who do I want to be honest with, to serve the most, it's going to be the viewers because that is what makes me able to do what I do. It's not the publishers who pay me the money. It certainly helps, but it's if my viewers turn away from me, think there's something wrong with my practices, that's going to hurt my income and everything else. And not to mention the show that I've built that I'm very proud of and happy to be a part of. I want to keep doing that. So if you can't trust if you have skepticism, I'd say what's going to service Rodney the best? Because humans sometimes can be somewhat selfish, and I'm going to do the thing that hopefully is going to help me the best, which is going to be to make sure my viewers are happy. Ultimately.
Absolutely.
Now, in the industry, I mean, we often talk about how social and nice the board game industry is, and it really is. We are able
really
to, once you get into it, you can meet almost anybody and make friends. You'll meet all the designers and publishers. Not everything is roses.
Sure.
Because relationships grow, sometimes those relationships fracture for whatever reason. Sometimes two people go other ways, and most of the time, you don't hear about it. There's a few public fights that have happened as time goes by, but for the most part, publishers and designers and companies will split and things, and there could be sometimes very heated, it's like family, like the heated arguments and things, or unhappiness, but for the most part, it's very professional, and that gets kept hidden. And so, Rodney mentioned bias, so let's say a company treats me badly, maybe I'm tempted to be like, well, wait till their next game, right? Or with Buonocore, I review a game like, wow, that's garbage, but man, I don't want to say that it is because it will bother him. A good reviewer, you have to be able to put trust in them. And if that trust isn't there, like you say, well, for you to maintain this trust, you can't have any relationships. I would rather than not be involved in the industry at all.
Right. I would sacrifice that too. I want the relationships. And I hope that the like you say, your performance, your actions, or whatever, can hopefully absolve people of the concerns they have in the long run.
You're doing it to grow your business. You're getting into these relationships. You're doing it to grow your business. You keep doing that. People want to work with you. You want to work with them. You find out the people you want to work with. It's all a cycle. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And another thing it's part of this whole thing that it almost sounds like there are people out there that think there's like some kind of vast conspiracy about this, and that you guys, the reviewers, are reviewing board games. We're not talking about the American political system. We're not talking about how to put down world terrorism. We're talking about board games. So gamers want good, honest opinions. Trust Tom or don't trust him. Trust another person or don't. Get your opinions from multiple sources. If you've got that $70 and you're not sure you want to spend it, well, Tom will give you one opinion and somebody else will give you another opinion. The third person, get them all. Take all the information. If it's that important to you, do it that way. But in the end, we're talking about board games, not about curing cancer here or something like that.
And something
this is important.
Something that's incredibly subjective, which is fun.
Very
incredibly. Something I love and have a great time playing, someone else hates. Would never want to play, and I love it. Those biases are all at work, so it's very difficult to watch and say, look at someone's opinion and go, well, because that's so positive, it must be wrong, or because it's so negative, it must be wrong. Fun is just a hard thing to quantify. It's going to be very, very personal.
I got some in a bottle.
Yeah, okay, give me some of that.
When I was a teacher and I went to different conventions and conferences around Asia when I was over there was always these networking events. Mm-hmm. And I would go to them and I would meet people and I hated the whole thing. I hated this whole, I was like, wow, I'm going to be friends, I'm going to talk to these people so that I can learn more about the industry. It just was very boring to me. I was like, I don't want to go talk to people just so I can get a job there if I need to at that place. I don't want to do that sort of thing. This networking thing. With the board game industry, it was much more natural. It was like, hey, we like the same thing. Let's talk about it. Oh, you're my favorite publisher. I'm used to use a proxy. You're my favorite designer or whatever, and you get excited about these things, and so you grow those relationships. Now, I think relationships should be somewhat open. I'm very open that I do Dice Tower Essentials through Arcane Wonders. I'm open that his podcast is part of our network. I'm open that we are friends, and that there's. I try to be friends with most publishers, but some I just happen to be better friends with than others. It's just the way it works out, and I'm pretty open about that. We talk about it on our show. You disclose these things, we disclose those, so you know that they're there. There are other reviewers and other people who also have different relationships, sometimes completely different ones than us, and those are there. So you should take those into account then if that shows up. If that's something that really bothers you, then take those into account. I mean, the best I can do is say, I don't let it affect my reviews of games. But you may disagree, but I'm willing to sacrifice a few people not liking that than those relationships.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think none of us here are poo-pooing the concerns people might have. I've certainly seen things, and I've thought, geez, I wonder if maybe that review or whatever was potentially influenced in some way because of the relationship. I felt that way too.
Yes.
I'm not against skepticism. I just think people should avoid cynicism and provide the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. I think that's the main thing.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. You can have a look at how things are happening, but don't be cynical about it. Don't say like, oh, look at that, they're together, so that's a bad thing. Because we're together because we happen to like each other. We all want to be together.
Yeah. That's one of the nicest things actually about what we do, and certainly one of the nicest things that's come out of it for me is I've made all these relationships with people I would never have made without having worked on the show. And in large part, that's again because of even my viewers have helped make that possible. People watch, so people are interested in having content on the show, and I get to go to shows and come visit you and play games, and all these are great things that come of it. I wouldn't want to lose that, honestly.
Some of my best friends in the world now are people that I've met through this industry, and that is just wonderful. And really, in my lifespan, this has been a very small portion of the whole thing. So, I'm proud.
Like 1/80th.
I'm very proud.
Yeah, we're all very fortunate.
I'm starting to hate you more and more.
We were doing so good.
It was so good. It was such a.
We're so close to happiness.
World peace was almost solved right here now. So it's just a wonderful place to be, this industry. So we're gonna continue to be friends. I hope so.
Well, tell us what you think. We'd like to hear back in the comments. I mean, certainly this is something that can get very heated at different times. I hope not so. People are going to have different opinions on that. That's kind of like where we stand in that regard. But I know that there's just a lot of different people who think different ways about it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Share
you.
it. Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to talk
Rodney,
about
and
this.
for Steve for coming on and talking about
Thank you,
this.
guys.
Thanks for watching BackTalk. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Rodney Smith.
I'm Stephen Buonocore.
And you're not.